point, C. That's what you call a half step. That's 1 fret on the guitar. It's a whole step. That's 2 frets on the guitar. This is called a minor second. This is called a major second. So we got a major third, a minor third. 4th and 5th, major 6th, minor 6th, major 7th, minor 7th. We talked about triads being a combination of 2/3 stacked one above each other. Here's a major third, and here's a minor third. We can talk about this triad as being a major minor triad. Let's just call this a major chord. We're going to call it minor. Okay. Here's our major, major, minor, and our diminished chord. The term diminished having to do with the interval of the diminished fifth. Diminished intervals come from perfect intervals made smaller by a half step. Okay, so then we added sevenths. Here's the 7 that just naturally diatonically occurs. So we talk about this chord as C, and then we specify major 7. Here's our 2 chord. And we see that the 7th that's involved is a whole step down from the octave. So we have a minor chord, and now we don't say minor 7th to specify the 7th, we just use the term 7th. So C, major 7th, D minor 7th. Same thing with the 3 chord. F, major 7th, G 7th, A minor 7th, and of course this becomes B half diminished 7th. It's a diminished minor. Just like this interval is called a diminished fifth, the same thing happens with a minor 7th interval. Diminish it by a half step. Now it's called a diminished 7th. So this chord here doesn't have a diminished 7th, it has a minor 7th. So it's only been diminished halfway. Hence the term half diminished 7th chord. And here's our 5 chord. Okay, it's the chord that has the leading tone in it. We're in the key of C. The 5 chord wants to go to the 1 chord. Right now, if we add a 7th to it, here's our 2/3 of our tonic chord. Here's the 3rd and the 7th of the 5 chord. Here's the 5 chord, 3rd and 7th. So you get this tendency here and here at the same time. So it just intensifies the effect. Okay, and then we talked about the relative minor. Instead of this being our tonal center, we're going to move our tonal center to A minor. Alright, the naturally occurring chords are going to obviously be exactly the same as they are in the key of C. How in the world do you have an E 7th chord showing up in the key of C? It has to do with this relative minor scale. Here's the 5 chord, here's our tonic now. This chord does not have a leading tone, which is a half step below the tonic. So how do you fix that? You put in a leading tone. If we're going to use a G sharp, that means any chord that uses a G now has to use a G sharp. So here's our 3 chord. Okay, that's a new chord called an augmented to it. There's a chord called the suspended chord. You simply have a 4th in the chord instead of a 3rd, resolved by simply changing the suspended 4th back. You can do that just about any of the chords. Now what happens here? Now this gets kind of interesting. There's a suspended 4th, which is a tone that is not in the key of C, middle tone. There's also a suspended 2nd chord, which has a 2nd instead of a 3rd. Suspended 4th chords are actually pretty common, and a lot of folk and country pickers do this kind of stuff all the time without even thinking about it. Here's a D chord. I'm suspending the 4th. I'm going to lift the 2nd finger so I get that open E string. Now I got a suspended 2nd. Suspend this F chord also.